to Twitch. Is Pop-Up acting up? Hi, Papoose. Hi, baby. So, I'm thinking about if I should make a stream notice. Probably should. Don't know what I would put. What I would draw. Let me do the thing. Oh, I don't have any music on, that's why I'm so... Like, it's too quiet. I feel like I'm being too quiet. It's because I don't have any noise. I can hear the gentle whirring of my computer. Feels the pupils look a little bit too much like Ammonite shells right now. So I'm starting this one pretty late because I did not do the speech bubbles last night. I only did the lines and the gutters. So I spent a lot of the beginning of my day overhauling some of the dialogue and a lot of the dialogue with slight changes so that it'd fit and so that I liked it a little better. And you know, dialogue bubbles can take me hours. Just because they need to be very precise sometimes, at least in shape alone, which means I need to draw them slowly. But it's done now. I'm thinking if I get the coloring done relatively quickly, then I might add another row of panels, which is something I've done before with comics. I've done that with several pages of Dropout, where I had a few extra hours before the deadline, so I went back and added panels. I think the page I can remember doing that the most on was the one where Lola's looking up at the sky while she's drinking. I added a couple panels of the liquor bottle and the food to set the tone a little more, which took me a total of maybe an hour and a half to do, from sketching to colored all the way. And I don't know why I can add panels quickly when it's just one row, but cumulatively it seems to add up to more than it usually is when it's just a little bit. It might have just been because they were also close-ups, so world may never know. Alright, I'm going to put this up on Patreon and then start. I don't know what I'm going to do for the sketch comic that I have to have done by Tuesday. I have various scripts set around, which I should probably lean on if I can't think of anything that strikes me. Should also look at that poll that I did last month. It was asking like what characters people wanted to see more of. Also, hi Josie. The Fursona smell meme is interesting because it elicits a sensory sort of aspect that I think people don't consider a lot. Like, I know for myself when I'm doing comics and such, I have to actively think, okay, I should probably go back and consider if there's any sensory parts that would affect a scene. Like for the canvas gesso, that was not something that was originally in the script. Okay. Let me save this. Even if it's just a quick sketch, I like to save them. You never know when they're going to be important. There we go. And I like to know how often I draw. I know Izzy got a ton of votes, and so did Otis and Cachette, which is not great at the moment. Because I told myself I wouldn't do sketch comics of characters if they currently had side comics running. So all my ideas for these two, I have to wait until the actual comic is over. Which honestly, I've been thinking, because I was looking at the script to see how much more was left to address. This one might be ending soon. Within the month, I'd be surprised if it wasn't over. For this page, this entire for this entire document, for the next pages, I made a layer that was specifically for the actual bubbles without the dialogue, and honestly, it saved a lot of time. So I might do it more frequently. I'll save background rendering for after I set down more base colors, I think. adding some shading to break up that bubble. Josie, that's really interesting. I didn't know it was a Western media thing specifically, although I do know that, for example, onomatopoeia is heavily neglected compared to like manga. Like just the fact that there's so much more onomatopoeia options for Japanese comics than Western ones speaks to me that it seems a lot more sensory, so I could believe the smell aspect too. Also, hello, Alex and Gwen. Yeah, I thought it was about time for a color change. Although I don't like the orange that much on them, so I might change it to a different color. But I did foreshadow it a little bit with the panel, the last panel of the last page. So, like, there was orange in that panel, which could be taken for just contrast or highlights, which was intentional. What we have here is an Oats very excited about cartoons and art. Sometimes I think about doing Oats's markings without the outlines like I did with Sugars, but I think I'd be liable to forget or make them look weird. I used to have a rule for character designs, and that was if the marking is not separate from the character's body in some way, like if it isn't elevated, it shouldn't have an outline. And that's something I've sort of grown detached from, because sometimes markings work better with outlines. Hands down. I used to be much stricter with character design in terms of it needs to logically make sense. And that's something I still try to stick to, although with more leniency, especially I feel like I gave myself a lot of freedom with alter designs because they literally don't logically need to make sense. And I noticed that I had a lot of fun drawing those designs and making them because I didn't have those restrictions. Please. Thank you. Trying to keep the blue away from the edge of Cachette's face too much because it'll start fighting with the background color. Even though there will be some rendering in the background, which is to help break up those colors, I do want to preemptively avoid that during every step of the process. I did basically have to line this whole page, like reline it from the sketch, which was not fun. I think this might be the only one that I didn't change much from the sketch. Although I did modify Otis's proportions a little bit. You can see some of the unfinished lines here that I need to fill in by hand. I'll save that for after I do everything else so that I don't fuck with the background too much. And I'll put the highlight here to break up this part from Otis's eye. See, now I'm noticing these two will conflict, which is not something I would have thought about while sketching, so I'll put the highlight right here. you have in here? Oh, she's eating her pigskin. Thinking about whether I want to fill this in completely with color or not, but I think I will leave it only colored around the edges because that gives it sort of an after image effect so that it doesn't look like Oats has 3 hands here. Because I did that thing where I made the bubbles on a separate layer and filled them in there instead of in the coloring, I also have lines without the dialogue. So I think I could transition to having, because somebody asked me for a page once, I don't remember which dropout page, but asked for a version with no speech bubbles, and I was like, I work on as few layers as possible, so I don't have it, but I could maybe switch over for borderline to something with that. This is what makes the limited palette comics so much easier, is because when I do full color comics, I pick each background base color by hand, and then from there pick all of the colors in the panel by hand as well, which can add up to literal thousands of colors, not including what I picked and then adjusted slightly and kept fiddling with. Whereas this method has a lot of eyedropping because there's only like 5 or 6 colors. I suppose I could change my methods with full color comics, but honestly, I don't really want to. I feel like it adds a lot of depth to have that control. that ability to change the color without it being extremely jarring, because if I were to do this and then change all of the colors in a panel or two, it'd be very obvious to a viewer. Whereas if I'm doing that every panel, it can lead to something much subtler. I try not to rely too much on color symbolism in general, because I do know that everybody cannot see color. There's a lot of colorblind people. If it is color symbolism, I generally try to make the colors different in value as well as their hue, so that even if you can't see what color it is, you can see it changed. And I want to change this a little bit. Yeah. To kind of go with the curve of her smile. Today, I didn't answer Gwen's question. Today I'm doing better than the last few days, which is good because I have this comic that's due. I've actually been thinking about different experimental stories. One of them being, I think it would be interesting to try to figure out or attempt to do a short comic without any dialogue or sound. So it'd be similar to a silent film sort of thing, but I'm not sure yet which character I would attempt that with. So I can't think of a plot. I'm sure it'll come to me. If not, I'm just going to stick it into drawing a blank somewhere, because that story will have a lot of experimentation in the comic composition, things like that. I'm going to make this all blue right off the bat so that the color of the hand is obvious, or as obvious as it can be. Adding some shadows to break up the white and the speech bubble and Oates' color here. We'll obviously be adding more shadows, but for now. I just want to make sure the colors are broken up. Basically, this is the adding base colors part of the process is testing for comprehensibility. Hi, baby. Hi, sweetheart. I'm sorry, I've been watching a ton of film theory. It makes me feel like shit about my own business, because it's also deliberate. It's very deliberate, but I was talking to my wife a little bit about it, and that there's a lot of film theory I already incorporate into more cinematic pieces like Dropout. But one thing that I don't really account for, and is probably the most interesting to listen to about film theory, is it's very collaborative, because films are huge pieces of work and sort of impossible to do on a higher scale as a one-person party. But I said, like, when someone says the director shot these shots a certain way because they wanted to make it easier for the editor to do what they wanted to do, that makes me think, well, that's kind of similar when you can point at a panel and go, okay, they drew this shot because it would be fucking easy, because there's only one person working on this and they have a deadline. Gwen, that'd actually be pretty good. I think, obviously, my first instinct would be Harley because Harley's new, but I think I've been neglecting Nicole a lot. I also don't have to deal with silence much anymore because I've been living with my wife for like years. But I can imagine it'd be super fucking quiet if I was living alone. Agoraphobia fucking sucks. I got diagnosed with it when I was 17, I want to say, and did not get much therapy for it. The therapy I did get was largely, leaving the house to go to my therapy sessions was the therapy. We would talk about if I was anxious or not, and that was it. So, after stopping the therapy, all of the progress that I was making was sort of just gone because I could immediately stop leaving the house again. I'm going to try to work on it once I move, though. Cultivate a social circle that I visit frequently or hang out with. I think it's probably the unhealthy part of me talking, but to some degree I don't even see the problem with it because I do get interaction online and with my spouse, so it's not like I'm completely cut off. But then I have some friends visit or something like that, and I realize how important being able to talk and read people's body language and things like that is to me and my mental health. because I do so well for days after interacting. I think I've normalized it so much in my routine that I stopped wanting to write about it, which is probably why I've been neglecting Nicole. And more so, Harley is sort of a what if to me, in terms of like, what if I just called people instead of leaving the house and things like that. So I think I need to fiddle with her story and character concept a little bit. I think what I might do for Nicole is make her leave the house more, but unwillingly, because that's definitely a thing I have to do, like to get groceries and shit. I do still have to leave the house, but I immediately go back and feel relieved that I won't have to again for X amount of days. Sorry, I didn't mean to turn this into a therapy session. Okay, that's all the base colors. Now I can go back, start rendering these completely. What was that, half an hour? Not bad. Okay, yeah, this is a light couch. In the background here, this is actually a blanket that Otis keeps in case they decide to sleep in their studio instead of where they usually do, which is in Cachette's bedroom. The blanket is actually folded here, which is sort of a nod. Earlier I mentioned that the one who folds the blankets is Otis and not Cachette, because the bed was made in the first scene. And I mentioned that might be important for a larger story with Otis. It's paying attention to details like that. You don't have to, though. I don't really like making it mandatory to notice details as much as it will make the story more enjoyable. There are some details, obviously, which you do have to notice, like plot relevant shit, but overall, if I want an audience to notice it because they have to, I won't make it subtle. Gotta wipe my glasses off here. I actually probably should fucking get new glasses soon, because these ones I've worn so much, the lens film that protects them is slowly tearing off. I used to not even know glasses had film on the lenses. That's one thing I've been avoiding because I have to leave the house to do it, is my glasses, my eye care. My eyes are actually very terrible. They've been getting a lot worse ever since I could remember. They've just kind of declined a lot. I'm not sure how to fix that. I think they're too far gone to even be fixed by LASIK at this point. Although, if they can, that's something I want to look into, because I don't want to be 35 and unable to see anymore. This one just keeps getting blurrier and blurrier. I still think about that one perfection meme. There we go. I dipped it in some water. That one perfection meme where it's a blurry definition of perfection, and the original one had a JPEG of wiping off glasses, and then it showed the actual clear screenshot, and then there was an edit where it was just a very long line of different effects to show blurry glasses once trying to wipe it off. I don't know if I always wonder how many people are aware that I wear glasses, because I've obviously posted selfies before, but I don't draw myself with them. Oh, Gwen, it's fine. I'm reading now. I made Nicole. I am aware that it's not good to neglect my trans woman characters, so I am inclined to try to do more with her. I can't just make them and then not develop them. I know some people, for them, their glasses are a big part of their identity. I think I went until I'm not sure what age exactly, but probably middle school somewhere, where I couldn't see so badly that my school told my mom she had to get me glasses. And that was when I first got glasses, despite not being able to see for years. So those formative years, I did not really conceptualize myself as someone with glasses. I had contacts for a while. I'm really not a fan of them though. I can put them in just fine, but I have problems taking them out, like with consistency. And it did a lot of damage to my vision. So I just wear glasses. I actually like the look of glasses a lot. Surprisingly, I don't have many characters who wear glasses either, but Nicole does. Remy's supposed to whenever I get around to drawing her or fully designing her. The agoraphobia in combination with the schizophrenia, which makes me sort of averse to social contact, combined with the personality disorder, which makes me need social contact, is a fucking mess. But from my experience, the agoraphobia has almost always won. Fear can really control you. My mother says that I've had agoraphobia for much longer than that. Like, she could tell. I'm like, you didn't think that was something worth getting checked out? It wasn't concerning to you that your child is afraid to leave the house. Sometimes it doesn't even feel like fear anymore. Like, I used to have panic attacks real bad, but now it's just a sense of dread, which I might have imparted into myself with enough negative reactions. Just break that up a little bit. I think one of the hardest things about agoraphobia is that you do need to leave the house to get therapy for it. There are not a lot of therapists who will do house calls anymore. So there's like this impasse where you need to be healthy enough to get healthy. Classic, classic American healthcare system. Classic psychiatric healthcare system in general. Although I did get called for jury duty like as soon as I turned 18, and I just wrote in that I had agoraphobia and I didn't have to go. Which, I mean, I guess that proves it's a very debilitating thing. I hope they never call me for jury duty again, though. Let's see if I can wiggle my way around this and this. I need to put this color here to break up Cachette's face, but it'll conflict with the speech bubble. But I might make both of these speech bubbles white then. Drop shadows are gonna save me here, I think. No, maybe not. Add some shadows and highlights to background so that it doesn't look too bland. And some highlights to this wine glass so that it actually looks like glass. Then modify the lines a little bit. Better. Shading looks better in this style if it's done in blocks. Because I would assume because the finer the shape of the shading is, the more implied detail. And actually Otis is going to get to this topic in a page or two about when it's appropriate to leave out detail and when it isn't. But if there's more detail and there's no blending, it can look sort of uncanny. In this case, in this panel, Otis is uncrossing their leg because they can't contain their energy anymore. So they probably will be bouncing it in the next page. It's good enough for that panel. I can never figure out when it's appropriate to abstract the backgrounds and when it isn't. I've always considered it lazy. Nafna does it a lot, but a lot of people in the comment section of Nafna have said they really like that aspect because it makes it interesting. There's something to read into. It gives it sort of a visceral, animalistic sense, in their opinion. No, I'm going to leave that as it is. I feel like one of the things you also have to juggle a lot with, instead of film, with being an independent creator, is you are judged a lot for laziness and merit, which films are too, but to a lesser degree. For example, a film doesn't have to say, I can't keep holding this shot because somebody will think that I'm lazy for drawing the same thing over and over. When it might be more appropriate to keep holding the shot. I didn't finish these hands in the other panel. When I'm streaming this on Sundays, I'm always like, oh shit, it's Thursday, which means I have a D&D session today that I completely forgot about. And then I realize, oh right, I don't only do comics for Thursday anymore. What's tricky about this is that, hold on. No, I guess we're good here. Actually, something I noticed is, so you can see how it looks right here when I turn down the depth versus now I'm going to go to saturation and turn it down. And you can see this right here, it looks like it's darker than this color. But I actually, because of this, I went to a simulator for color blindness and put one of my pictures in, and then switched to both of these to see which one it looked closer to, and it was actually the depth and not the saturation. So I've been keeping that in mind for when I'm judging palettes now. I'm not sure what depth means, although I do get why it looks the way it does. Kind of lightening up some of the colors here. When I lighten the colors on Otis's eyebrows, that's me testing the water for not drawing any outlines for their eyebrows. For this one, I'll do semi-abstract. And fix up this mouth a little bit. Sorry, I am sort of hyper-focusing, so I'm not super paying attention to the chat with the seriousness that I should. That's dedication to see a therapist an hour away. I know this is a seriously late response, but still. Let's try fucking with the background a little here. I don't want to go straight for frustration scribbles, so I'm sort of trying to emulate the feeling of them without using them specifically. Although that might be too eye-catching. I don't want it to fight with the figure for visual attention. been trying to wrap my head around non-representational art more. Mostly because I want to do a series of paintings by Otis that would be like a slow development towards abstract art. And I feel like they would dabble in non-representational before deciding that's not what they want. Too much energy. Put a little contrast there. A little too much detail over here. I think this panel is set relatively set to go. beautiful animal. I don't know if you all heard that. Just a very loud snort from my dog. I think the color that I like the most in this palette is the light green, which is different from white, but in the context of the palette it looks like it's just white. I want to be able to make more creative color choices. I feel like the green was a creative one, but in general, I'm very literal minded, so when I pick a color, it might not necessarily be something that could be more aesthetically pleasing. I'm not sure how to describe it, but I know what a skilled color choice is versus just one because you know how color works. Like the artist for Cucumber Quest, she makes a lot of creative color choices. Gigi. DG. Sometimes you're just born with a name that is made for branding yourself. And then sometimes you're trans and you get to pick out a name that's good for branding yourself instead. Now the background. I try not to zoom in because then I see shit like this and I spend so much time on it. And I don't think it's really that important. It's not pixel art. Alright, try this again. This is why the shading portion of full comics takes me 2 days to do. This is where I add all the little details and fix things up too, so it's not all shading. Four more panels still. I thought I only had two. I'll move to these ones real quick because these will be easier than the other two because they're close-ups. Although this one, I need to fix the head shape a little bit. don't know if I will even have Otis bring up the fact that the Western comics industry was largely created by Jewish people. I might though. It'll depend on how I can stir the conversation. Not sure how I feel about the orange shadows on Otis's eyes, but I did it because this is a darker setting than Cachette's room. Which is also why the shadows on Otis are blue like this. Need a little eye shine here. Otis has nice, big, glossy eyes. I should probably add a background to this of some sort, just so it's not completely empty. Played myself. I just realized these aren't the last two panels I have to do because I skipped the above two. Tricked my brain into thinking I was more done than I was, so I could try to draw a couple extra panels. sometimes I've been looking at this this comic and thinking the visuals seem to conflict with the intended message. Like, I think I could easily see somebody reading Otis as an antagonistic character, or somebody who's supposed to be an antagonist, because they have the eye bags and the dramatic shading. But at the same time, those are things I relate to personally. Add some shine to this brush handle so that it has form outside of, or defined from, the shirt. Eye shines. Don't want to forget those. trying to separate the front tooth right here from the back teeth a little bit. It's not working out so well though. I'll leave it like that. I don't want these two colors touching, so might just make her tongue orange here. There we go. Guess I should leave it like that. Cachette's so easy on me once I get the sketching part done. going to close off the highlights or the backlighting here because it would conflict a little bit on the chest with this motion. Instead, I'm going to add some lighting to the neck. Okay, these lines need to be lightened a little bit. I'm going with orange instead of blue or red so that it's very light. Doesn't conflict with the actual lines, makes it more legible. Checking for more color leaks on the outside because I'm about to do the background. And I want to be able to just select the entire thing. Okay. Looks decent. of an inverse thing going on here. I realize I did not color this brush. Okay. Now I think I can try to sketch a couple more panels since I have about 3 hours. This is a long one. Let's bring my sketch layer back up. This panel will have dialogue, the other two will not. Just going to move this up because I can already see the finalized gutters. I don't want to have to erase more sketch than I have to. Hopefully these, if these aren't clean enough to not line, then I'm just gonna put them on the next page, but if I can go straight to coloring, basically, aside from the one or two bubbles that'll be here, then I would rather do that now and have it on this page, so. I want to make their profile a little stronger, a little wider. I drew this one first because it's going to be a litmus for this panel, which is the same shot. Hello, Laurel. I'm gonna plug my phone in. This expression, it should be easy, but it's not working with me. Those eyelashes, they're gonna get me. This is very anime looking, this face. Sometimes I just don't have a lot to say when I'm sketching. It seems fairly obvious what I'm doing, at least to me. I don't like how small I made Cachette's head in this panel, but I don't want to redraw it either. Going to, instead of moving Cachette over, move the border over so there's more room in the panel that has dialogue bubbles to fit. Making her sleeve droop a little bit. Those are small things that add body to clothes. though. Her collar is too big here. Thank you, Josie. I decided to remove the sweat because this is probably going to get another 3 panels in the next page regardless of the expression change. Let me bring this one over here and work with it. Someone's getting antsy. Hi, baby. Want to lay down for a little longer? Yeah, she's chilling. She's a good girl sometimes. I'm imagining this comic, except every instance of cartoons is replaced by the word furries. I'll probably do an edit. I'm a fan of Otis's eyebrows as much as I am their eyelashes. They both really contribute to a look. good enough. I'm going to add a couple gutters. Oh no, I have to draw I have to write the dialogue first before I can do that shit. This is more than 1 or 2 bubbles. Okay, I'm gonna put the gutters down now. I'm gonna adjust the sketch a little bit first so that it's even on both sides, which is a pain in the ass that continues to haunt me. Can't believe it's 8:40 already. So even though I'm using the shift tool to make straight lines, it's hard to get them not crooked, because they usually end up being a little off. And size algorithm is not exactly great. Now, this is the part I always zoom in for, is cleaning up the gutter lines. I used to not do this so much at the beginning of Dropout, but you know how it goes. Nafna used to also not have very clean gutter lines, and that was something Zachary eventually decided to get serious about. Specifically, specifically Zachary said when there were black borders, um, that meant a scene was serious, and when, or pivotal to the story, and when there weren't, that meant that the scene wasn't as serious. Something that I want to figure out is how my borders and Otis's borders would differ in style, because everybody does comic borders a little different. And I want them to have an interesting way of doing that. I'm gonna zoom in for the speech bubble part also, because that saves time. Makes it easier to make a circle, basically. There we go. Might add the tail to the last bubble. I was originally going to separate them. when I connect speech bubbles with lines like this, I try to make it so it's one consistent line if you drew something through it, or a zigzag, whichever, depending on the mood of the speech bubbles. Oh, that's not what I want. And then I'm going to copy this and put it on the bubbles layer. Move on to cleaning up the sketches as needed and making them lines. This is usually stuff I do off stream, but I would rather finish it all now. So we're going all the way, the entire distance. Usually when I'm lining, I have to do 2 passes with cleanup, which is one where it's red and I'm usually connecting lines or correcting them, and then another after I darken everything to the actual line color, where I clean up zigzags and stray pixels to the best of my ability. Closing up lines. I don't zoom in for this part because I feel like I don't get a feel for how it's going to look zoomed out. Especially the line weight and pen pressure. Overall, I still prefer to save the sketches when I can, as opposed to relining, if for nothing else. I feel like when I sketch an expression, I'm going for extremely accurate. Like I'll do the slight touch-ups there, and relining it can destroy some of that in my eyes. questionable if doing this or relining takes longer, but if I'm already done with all three of these panels basically, then it definitely does not take as long as relining. Let's say lining a panel takes about 30 minutes per panel, as long as the sketching. I am not sure why, but I absolutely hate it. Actually, I remembered I can leave the lines in because I have a bubble layer now. See, there's a lot of cleanup needed right here, which is why I do 2 sweeps. But it seems really weird visually if I try to work only in dark colors and just skip the fixing it up in red phase, which is why I don't like lining. It just looks weird without the color. Let me check on the chat here. I don't think Otis has strong opinions on alias versus anti-alias, although personally I'm probably going to have them use a style with anti-alias lines or pixely lines like I'm using, so alias. If not for my own sake, because I do feel like it's a very distinct and schizophrenic choice. Like literally the reason I choose it is because it's easier to see. Like it's easier to differentiate everything. Which even for my schizophrenic friends who don't have glasses is a thing. I think I posted about it once, which I might look for after I'm done with this. What I know best about Otis is that they really like contrast, and so I think I've mentioned before they worked a lot with pen and ink beforehand. I feel like this was something I also did when I worked traditionally more than digitally. But I think that the pixely line style can really kind of imitate how stark that contrast can be when it's just black and white. I'm gonna leave the jaw hinge just hidden. Otis had hair, I imagine it'd be sort of like Einstein hair, but maybe a little curlier. It's been a while since I looked at a picture of Einstein. Okay, that's good enough. I'm going to copy the gutter layer. That's always how I put down the base colors. It's just by copying the gutter layer and then merging it with the coloring layer. Even to the best of my abilities, there's usually still color leaks. That's just how it is. I do feel like Otis has at least several styles that they commercialize or offer for commissions, but they probably use the actual anti-aliased personal style for comics at the very least, and the cartoony ones, or the cartoony style. There's not multiples. I think I would fucking die. Gonna do a soft split here with the shadows. So that it's a little divided from the bubble. I don't want to block it in though. Always leads to messy shading. Some people sketch by blocking out the figure, and I'm like, who the fuck are you? How do you survive like this? That's something I've only done in like desperate measures when I can't draw a figure to save my life. I fucked something up. I don't know if I can fix it though. No, I cannot. Okay. See, when I filled the dialogue layer this color to color the speech bubbles for those other panels, I accidentally made all the details that I put on this layer the same color as the lines. Papa, what's your problem? Relax. Go lay down. I will come to you once I'm done. I know she can't understand me. She's sort of chilling. Okay, background. Cutting it close to this deadline, but when am I never cutting? When am I ever not cutting it close? You know? I've gotten used to it. First 20 times is scary. No, it's just, alright. I know how this goes. Hey, Pops. You're getting very restless. I'm almost done, sweetie. And then I will tend to you. One more. How are the Olympics going? I never keep up with sports. Also have some feelings about the Olympics. Not for this stream though. This is a 50 Shades song, but it reminds me of Felix because of the fact that I drew their reference while this was playing on repeat from a Spotify glitch. I did not realize that it was a 50 Shades song. Shade those eyeballs to give him a little definition from Oates' face. Although it's much easier to shade them when their eyes are half lidded. See, they look kind of bloodshot like this. Might just be this specific color though. And I think that's about it for this page. So I am going to end the stream, tend to my needy dog, and then upload it on Patreon in its full res glory. Thank you everybody who participated. This was a long one, but I appreciate the patience.